a beloved mother and friend.
Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth.
She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
Murdered in her home.
Just the sheer brutality. Somebody was out of control.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening.
Sends police on the hunt for a killer.
Possible suspect right away is her husband.
And they find out, uh-oh, there's someone else involved with this person.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever gonna find who did this?
But the search for the truth
This is strange. There were so many twists and turns. What really happened?
uncovers a culprit.
Something's going on here. They were never even on the suspect radar.
That surprises everyone.
Wow, that was a twist none of us expected.
It was shocking.
No, this isn't right.
I never expected that someone like that could be evil.
Howard County, Maryland, an affluent community nestled between Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
Howard County itself is a very quiet, peaceful suburb.
Howard County is very much a bedroom community. People move here for the schools. That's what it's known for. There's very, very little crime.
But on Sunday, November 15th, 1998, at 7:44 p.m., a concerned resident makes a call to police.
I have a friend who I normally hear from every day, and I haven't heard from her all day, and there's a really funny message on my machine from last night. And I wondered if someone could drive by her house and check it out.
What's the lady's name?
Sarah Roris.
I did not hear from Sarah all day. That is not normal. Something's wrong.
Laura tells police that the 35-year-old single mother lives with her 1-year-old son, but the boy is with his father this weekend. Patrol officers head to the Roris home in the township of Elkridge to investigate.
The police were able to gain access to the house, and upon entering the house, they conducted a sweep, and in the back family room, they found the body of Sarah Rares. It appeared that she'd been stabbed to death.
Even hardened homicide investigators are taken aback when they see Sarah's mutilated body.
The thing that still sticks in my mind is just the sheer brutality. I can close my eyes and see it as vividly today as I did then. The ones most visible were wounds to Sarah's neck and throat, multiple deep cuts and slashes. She was basically just short of being decapitated. She had severe cuts to each wrist. Her hands were just short of being cut completely off. There was a series of stab wounds to her stomach. Tremendous amount of blood on the floor around her, blood spattered up and down the walls. There was blood splattered all over the child's toys. It was complete and utter overkill. Somebody was out of control.
Could the vicious nature of the attack mean this was a crime of passion? Detectives hunt for clues to help piece together this gruesome event.
It was apparent that she had been dead for a period of time before we discovered her. The blood had pretty much dried. I was estimating she probably had been dead for about 24 hours. It had been forced entry to the house. Bloody boot prints leading from the body indicate that the suspect both entered and exited through the window. There appeared to be some degree of ransacking. VCR appeared to be missing. The phone was missing from the wall. A couple drawers in the kitchen had been rifled through, but at the same time, the victim's laptop, computer, purse, and items were relatively untouched on the kitchen table. An initial thought on our part was, could it all be staging in an attempt to throw us off, to make us think it was a robbery or burglary gone bad?
Looking for witnesses, police fan out to speak with Sarah's neighbors on her quiet suburban street.
As brutal and as violent as this attack was, nobody heard anything, not a sound.
Inside the house, the forensic team spends hours gathering evidence.
On the wall above Sarah's body, crime scene technicians were able to recover a couple bloody fingerprints. It indicated that the person was wearing gloves.
Investigators must now solve the mystery of why Sarah Raris would fall prey to such a brutal attack. Detectives start by speaking with Sarah's friend, Laura Billiter, who first called police. They have to reveal the heartbreaking news that her friend is dead.
I didn't want it to be true. I was in denial, and you just can't process information for a while. You're frozen. I kept trying to deny that it was Sarah. No one deserves to die like that.
Sarah Williamson was born on a Florida military base in 1963, the daughter of an Air Force sergeant. Growing up, she was gregarious with a knack for mathematics.
Sarah was not your typical introverted mathematician. She was very sociable.
To describe Sarah, she gave love freely. She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
After graduating college, Sarah moved to Maryland, where she took a job as a statistician at the National Security Agency.
Sarah and I met at work, and she was the best friend you could ever have. Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth. She had friends everywhere at work. She had built up a reputation for herself. She was well respected. And she always was going to school or improving herself in some way.
In 1991, while earning a master's degree, Sarah met Lorenzo Raris, and they began a relationship. The two married in 1994.
Sarah wanted the husband, the children, the house in the country, the white picket fence. She wanted that golden dream.
After 3 years of marriage, Sarah and Lorenzo had a son, Will.
She was a great mom. She doted on Will.
But the new baby put a strain on the marriage.
Her family was down in Alabama, so she was missing that support system. Lorenzo did very little to help her.
Over the next year, friends saw their relationship deteriorate.
Things really took a downturn. The marriage was breaking down. Sarah, during all that, was a complete mess.
In 1998, Sarah and Lorenzo separated. Eager for a fresh start, Sarah filed for divorce.
She was just becoming a strong woman again, proud of the fact that she was able to live on her own and take care of her child on her own. It was wonderful to see.
Now, 5 months later, Sarah's been found butchered in her own living room. The beloved mother's lifeless body left laying in a pool of blood.
She had become such a strong, independent woman, and I was so proud of her. I was devastated.
Laura gives detectives the phone message from her answering machine that prompted Laura to call police in the first place.
I couldn't understand any of it because it was so garbled. The only thing I knew, somebody was in trouble. I did a redial, and I figured out it was from Sarah.
In listening to the recording, you can hear sounds of a struggle, followed by a series of short, sharp screams. It was 30, 40 seconds, basically, of Sarah being murdered. I believe that she was probably in the process of maybe trying to call 911 when she inadvertently hit the preset speed dial for Laura.
The timestamp on the message is 8:46 p.m. on Saturday night, only 36 hours earlier.
The recording gave us a starting point that we know on this date and this time, Sarah Raris was attacked and murdered.
I could hear her last moments. I was shocked, I was horrified. And then I got angry, and I'm like, you gotta go pick up Lorenzo, he's involved in this.
Laura was aware Sarah was involved in a very bitter and heated custody dispute with her estranged husband. She had real fear that it was not going to end well. So I wanted to talk to the husband.
This is not going to be a random act of violence. This is going to be murder.
Coming up, a hunt for the truth
Something's going on here. We had to look into the possibility of an affair.
Reveals buried secrets.
We opened the door and he threw up all over the parking lot. He knows something.
And a stunning turn in the case.
I was absolutely shocked. It's like out of a movie.
It was such an unexpected twist.
Hours after discovering the body of 35-year-old Sarah Raris, detectives investigating the murder have a lead. Sarah's friend Laura tells police she suspects Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Raris, might have had something to do with her murder.
We found out that Sarah was involved in an extremely contentious custody divorce situation. Internal police records had indicated that the police had responded there at least once before for disturbance between Sarah and her estranged husband.
After Will was born, the marriage really started breaking down. Lorenzo was very jealous of his child because his child was taking away the attention that he had received from Sarah. Sarah told me that he was not happy with that.
Sarah turned to Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, who lived nearby, for help.
Sarah wanted Amelia involved. She was hoping that Amelia would be a calming influence on Lorenzo. And it would also allow, Sarah to spend a little bit more time with Lorenzo.
Instead of getting better, things got worse.
Sarah confided in me his mother was a little too involved doing all of the caregiving, and Lorenzo wanted nothing to do with the day-to-day task that it takes to raise a child. Sarah was very adamant that Lorenzo is his father. He needs to be very involved in taking care of their son.
One morning, I got a phone call. Sarah was hysterical. She and Lorenzo got into an argument. He tried to hit her while she was holding Will, so she had to turn with the baby in her arms, and he had kicked her. She was just distraught. And I'd come pick her up, and we head straight to the courtroom. We put a restraining order in, and Lorenzo is not allowed back into the house. Lorenzo was extremely mad. Sarah was scared for her life. She was deathly afraid that she was going to be murdered.
Lorenzo Raris is approached by the Howard County Police for questioning.
When Lorenzo was first notified that his wife had been murdered, he covered his face with his hands. He fell to his knees. And in the initial officer's minds, he pretended to be crying and weeping into his hands, and that when he stood up, there was no evidence at all that he had been crying. One of the first things I noticed in dealing with Lorenzo was his lack of reaction, his lack of emotion, his lack of caring was significant. I thought he was smug, I thought he was arrogant. I just sensed he wasn't all that upset by what had happened to Sarah.
Detectives start by asking the 33-year-old sales manager if he had any involvement in Sarah's murder.
He denied it, that he'd had anything to do with it. At the same time, I just felt that there was something off. It was just an instinct on my part, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Lorenzo offers up his own theory as to who killed Sarah.
He alluded to the fact that Sarah may have been involved or been having an affair with a previous co-worker, but he said that if anything had happened, it would have probably been a result of this affair.
Lorenzo claims the last time he saw Sarah was on Friday morning when he picked up their son for the weekend.
The alibi that he provided for the Saturday night and weekend in question was that he was at home at the family house with the baby. His brother and his parents, who also lived in the house, were there.
Detectives collect evidence from Lorenzo to search against anything found at the crime scene.
We had a search warrant for his person, which allowed us to collect samples of DNA, hair, photographs, and fingerprints.
With nothing concrete to tie Lorenzo to the murder, detectives have to let him go.
Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, he still has an alibi when he's saying he's at home and he's got all these family witnesses. If in fact he did it, we need to start punching holes in the family alibi.
Investigators head to the Raris family home, 30 minutes away in Parkville.
His car was seized, and other detectives then launched into the search of the Raris family home. We conducted interviews with all the family members, including Lorenzo's mother, Amelia. When asked where she was on that Saturday night, she said that she was working. She was a nurse's aide at a local nursing home, so she was at work during the time frame of the homicide.
Amelia tells detectives that another member of the Raris family was at home that night.
Lorenzo's brother, Mike, lived with the Raris family in Parkville. They all lived in the same house. Mike is the younger brother of Lorenzo, but as far as their personalities, there was a distinct difference between the two. He didn't have the same degree of arrogance or smugness about him that Lorenzo had. He appeared to be somewhat timid.
Mike tells police that Lorenzo was at home when he woke up to go work his night shift job.
It's the family saying he was there. A family alibi, in my opinion, has never been rock solid. It has to be investigated.
But a search of the Raris home fails to yield any new clues.
Nothing of evidentiary value came from the Raris house. Nothing of evidentiary value came from his truck. The only thing we walked away with is we had his initial denials and his initial alibi. From that point on, he lawyered up.
As detectives consider their next move, the public concern about the murder of Sarah Raris grows.
This murder sent shockwaves through the Howard County community. It caused major headlines.
There are a lot of Sarahs in this community, so to have a smart, competent, career-driven woman murdered in this way in her house, it was shocking.
With nothing tying Lorenzo to the murder, investigators turn their attention to his allegation that Sarah was having an affair. Could that have led to her death?
We had to look into the possibility of an affair. The former boss that Lorenzo claimed she was having an affair with had to be tracked down and interviewed. The relationship between the two of them, we had to look at it. We had to investigate.
Police investigating the savage murder of Sarah Raris are looking into her estranged husband's claim that Sarah had been having an affair with her former boss.
Lorenzo had implied that Sarah was having an affair with a former co-worker or supervisor, a gentleman by the name of Don Lewis. He had since retired from NSA and was living in Massachusetts.
Detectives travel to Cape Cod to interview Don Lewis. The 51-year-old tells detectives that he is not surprised by Lorenzo's claim of an affair.
Mr. Lewis told us that Lorenzo had emailed accusing him of having an affair with Sarah. He denied it. He said he was a father figure or mentor to Sarah. There was no romantic overtones, and there was no reason for him to kill her, nor did he want anything bad to happen to her.
Don tells detectives he had been shocked to hear news of Sarah's death, and he was at a friend's dinner party hundreds of miles away when it happened.
Mr. Lewis had an alibi for the Saturday night. He was in Massachusetts the night of the murder, and they had a solid alibi.
Detectives reach out to those close to Sarah to learn more about her relationship with her former boss.
Don Lewis was a friend of hers. They did have like a mentor-mentee relationship, but that was all there was to Don Lewis.
It was more like a father-daughter type of relationship. There was never a romance.
The investigation revealed that the affair aspect of it appeared to be pure fabrication on the part of Lorenzo. There was just nothing there.
A week following her death, those closest to Sarah gather to honor her memory.
The church memorial was packed. There was so much love in that room. Everybody showed up. All of her coworkers and friends from work showed up. The police showed up. Lorenzo didn't show up, nor did any of the rest of the family.
I actually covered her memorial service. Her friends were not shy about casting aspersions on Lorenzo Raris, her husband. That's their suspect number one, their prime suspect.
After Sarah's funeral, investigators speak with the medical examiner about what was found during the autopsy.
The cause of death was no surprise. It was massive blood loss due to the lacerations to her throat. She bled out over 80% of her blood volume. Even the pathologist characterized it as complete overkill.
A forensics report reveals no useful fingerprints from the crime scene. But investigators still hold hope for tests on the bloody glove prints found on the wall behind the body.
The blood was sent out for DNA analysis. That takes a little bit of time to obtain.
While they await test results, detectives revisit their strongest lead, the phone message that captured the final moments of Sarah's life.
Other detectives are listening to the tape, and they thought that at some point in the struggle, they heard Sarah utter the name Mike.
Could Sarah be calling out the name of her killer?
Somebody says, oh, right there, it sounds like Mike. I hear Mike. Lorenzo's brother's name is Mike or Michael.
But what possible motive could Mike Raris have to kill his sister-in-law?
One of the theories that we were kicking around at this point was, could it have been a family member? Because initially all suspicion would have fallen on Lorenzo. And to keep Lorenzo out of it and to maintain the child custody, to have a family member do it, the most logical one would have been Mike. He had to be looked at as a potential suspect.
Detectives sit down with Lorenzo's little brother and play him the answering machine message.
The recording was played for him, and Mike was asked, do you hear the name Mike? And he said no, he did not. Mike denied being personally involved in the murder of Sarah. My overall impressions of Mike was, I don't think he had it in him to do something like this, but I had a feeling that there was something playing on him. Again, he was part of Lorenzo's alibi that he was at home at the time of the murder.
Mike sticks to the story he'd previously told police, that when he woke up Saturday evening to go to work, Lorenzo was at home.
Blood was drawn, hairs were pulled. We fingerprinted him, we photographed him. We drove him back to his job. I told him, I said, I think you know what happened. I think you know what is going on. And we opened the door, and he threw up all over the parking lot. And I said, whenever you want to come clean on this, you know who to call, and I gave him my card. My partner and I, we both felt he knows something.
Detectives investigating the murder of Sarah Raris suspect that her brother-in-law, Mike Raris, might know more about her murder than he is letting on.
My feeling was something's going on here. Maybe if he didn't do it, he definitely knows about it.
Mike's brother and Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Raris, is still a suspect in Sarah's murder. But both men say they were at home together at the time she was killed.
If there was one avenue to break the Raris family alibi, I just thought the weak link was going to be Mike. Problem was, the lawyer that was representing Lorenzo got involved, and from that point on, we were not allowed to speak with Mike without counsel being present. That threw up a huge wall.
A month following the murder, the police investigation is at a standstill. But there is one person that investigators think might be able to help.
Lorenzo had been married previously. His first wife, Becky, was still living locally. We thought she's somebody that we could enlist.
Detectives meet with Becky Raris to ask for her assistance in the investigation.
Once she heard that Sarah had been murdered, Becky actually agreed to help us. She still had some degree of relationship with Lorenzo. They were cordial to each other. Becky agreed to allow us to record her phone calls with Lorenzo. We were hoping to obtain statements from Lorenzo that would incriminate him in the murder.
Becky reaches out to her ex-husband and tries to steer their conversation to Sarah's murder.
She was phenomenal. She conducted a number of controlled calls on our behalf with him. We were hopefully optimistic that we would get something, but he never said anything incriminating to her on those recordings.
Detectives have hit a dead end in their pursuit of Sarah's killer.
I remember cornering the police chief out of like a public event to ask him, hey, any updates on the case? And he obviously said no. There were no updates to give. They had nothing.
I prayed every day that this would be the day that something, would come forth.
Investigators get new hope when DNA analysis of blood from the glove prints at the crime scene comes back.
The blood came back as a mixture of Sarah's DNA and an unknown male. We were confident that we had the killer's DNA because it's mixed with Sarah's blood. If we found that person, then we could definitely put them at the scene with her actually bleeding.
Could this finally be what detectives need to tie Lorenzo to his wife's murder?
We submitted DNA samples from Lorenzo and his brother Mike for DNA comparison. Came back that neither one were a match. Obviously, that was a bit of a blow. I mean, it's very disappointing. Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, it's not him.
In the beginning, it was pretty clear the police thought that her husband played a role in this. She had a very messy divorce going on. There were custody disputes, but the police didn't arrest him. And so there was a real air of mystery about it because the police couldn't figure it out either.
If Lorenzo was not responsible for the murder of Sarah, who could her killer be? And why was the beloved mother killed in such a violent manner? Investigators are back to square one.
Something has got to give on this. You go back through it again. Did I miss something? You have to look at everything. I did contact the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit in Quantico, and they run it against all other cases in the country looking for similarities. Nothing of value came from that.
Detectives also seek help with deciphering the answering machine message from Laura that captured Sarah's attack.
We sent the recording to the FBI to see if they could clean it up and enhance it to try to determine if in fact it was a name. But well, it turned out it's not Mike. The whole thing with hearing the name Mike, I think, in hindsight, was just pure power of suggestion.
When you have a murder of this sort and no arrest, there was a concern and tension in the community as to what kind of person would do something like this.
We had been hammering away on this thing for almost 7, 8 months. At that point, we're kind of like dead in the water. We felt there was nothing else we could do to advance the case.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever going to find who did this? You started to lose hope.
Just as the case goes cold, an urgent call comes in from a neighboring jurisdiction.
My partner came running down the hall and says, you need to come down and take this call. I have Baltimore County Homicide on the phone. You need to hear this. We got it. We got this case.
The 7-month hunt for the killer of Sarah Raris is at a standstill when detectives investigating the murder receive an unexpected phone call.
Picked up the phone and it was Detective Phil Morrill from Baltimore County. He says, hey, I just got done running a wired conversation with an inmate. in the Baltimore County Detention Center, talking about how he committed this murder of a woman. He described how he went through the window and how he attacked her, how he stabbed her in the belly. And he says, I damn near took her head off. And he says, do you guys have anything like it? And I said, oh yeah, we do. The murder of Sarah Rares. And he said, well, you need to hear this tape.
Howard County investigators get a copy of the jailhouse recording of Ardale Tickles, who had been locked up for an armed robbery 3 months ago.
We sat down and we started listening to the tape of Ardale Tickles. Tickles is describing this homicide that he had committed.
Yeah, the one that I killed, so I dropped through the window. He's like, no, don't kill me, please don't. And I started driving out of the bus, and blood was just gushing out. On the wrist, there was no blood. I took the knife, and I just took the head off.
Tickles is describing things that only the police and the suspect would know, all the injuries that had been inflicted upon Sarah. None of that had been released. None of that had been made public. I knew now we had it. I mean, I'm confident Ardale Tickles committed this murder.
Tickles keeps talking and has an even bigger revelation.
He's talking about how he came to be employed to do this.
I got paid, you know what I'm saying, to let me while I was working out. He told me to go hit this place for me. He just gave me the head to do it, and I went to go do it.
It's now a straight-up murder for hire. We had the actual physical killer of Sarah Rares. We needed the person who hired him and paid him to conduct the murder, a co-worker. We had some homework to do.
Who was this mysterious co-worker? What was her relation to Sarah? And why would she want Sarah killed? Investigators start with Ardale Tickles.
He's 19 years old. He's a kid at this point. He was incarcerated awaiting trial. He robbed the McDonald's and he shot the manager during the course of the robbery. When we started digging into him, we couldn't find any kind of criminal record with him prior to this.
Detectives checked Tickles' employment history, looking for any intersection with Sarah's life or those that knew her.
We went back like a year. He was employed in the laundry room at a local nursing home in Baltimore. He did the laundry for this facility.
The entire investigation turns when detectives realize who also worked at the same nursing home.
Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, they were co-workers. That was kind of mind-blowing, you know. She was never even on the suspect radar. Him and Amelia working at the same nursing home, it was the one piece to the puzzle that you needed to put in, and the rest of them just kind of fell into place after that.
Could it really be true that this 63-year-old grandmother hired someone to kill her daughter-in-law? And if it is true, who else knew about it?
We still weren't convinced that Lorenzo was completely blameless in this. So there was still a lot of investigative work to do. The Rares house in Parkville was put under surveillance while we investigated the relationship between Tickles and Amelia. We matched up work schedules. So we were able to establish, yes, they worked together. Yes, they worked the same hours. We were able to locate a few co-workers who remember seeing Amelia talking to this guy. We were able to show that relationship did in fact exist.
But even with a known relationship, police had no evidence Amelia plotted to murder Sarah. To get to the truth, investigators turned to the man they believe killed Sarah.
Tickles was brought in to try to elicit his cooperation. What he gives up, we can use.
Detectives play Tickles the jailhouse recording.
I had the tape recording set to a point where he admits to stabbing her. He heard his voice talk about the murder. As you can see, we don't need your confession. No, we got it.
Can you please enlighten me on what I'm facing and what I'm dealing with in this case?
You're going to be charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. But we need to get some details worked out. The person we want is this woman that hired you. I had a picture of Amelia. I said, is this the woman? And he says, yeah, that's her. we got her. I mean, it was huge. In some respects, it validated what we thought all along, that everything originated in the Rares household, in the Rares family. Never in 100 years would we have thought, Dad, she's the one that was calling the shots. What did she say to you?
For a minute, she couldn't go on with life until this lady was dead. She was like, do me a favor and kill this lady, basically.
So she used the word kill?
Kill, take him off the earth, yeah. She said, I'll pay you. She said, I'll give you money.
If you hire somebody to commit a murder and that person carries it out, then you're susceptible to the same charges and the same penalties as the person who did the actual killing. So now we're looking at first-degree murder charges for Amelia. After it was over with, did you call this woman that night?
No, I met her at work, like that week.
Okay, is that when she paid you?
Yeah, she had a bundle with like $3,000.
Despite Tickle's revelations, investigators know it will be hard to bring charges against Amelia on the word of a jailed offender.
We had enough. We could have easily arrested Tickles and called it case closed. We needed something that really implicated Amelia in the conspiracy. What we wanted him to do to nail down the first-degree murder charge was get on the phone and call Amelia. We wanted to run a controlled call with him, and he refused. When that didn't happen, we had some work to do.
Investigators now suspect Sarah Raris was murdered in a hit organized by her mother-in-law, Amelia Raris. But the hitman, Ardale Tickles, refuses to take part in a wiretap to implicate her.
I would have loved to have got this controlled phone call to Amelia to further establish Amelia's involvement in the planning of the murder, but we still felt we were on the right track. A big item of evidence in this case obviously would be follow the money. We pulled Amelia's financial records and found out, sure enough, Amelia wrote a check out in the amount that Tickles says he got paid, and she wrote it out to cash. That was key. That's the money trail.
Amelia Raris is arrested and interviewed by detectives.
She acknowledged her relationship with Tickles, and she also acknowledged that she hired him, but she alleged that she did not hire him to kill her. He did that on his own, she said. I just wanted to scare her.
There was no intention to kill. I didn't know that it's like that. In fact, I thought he's not going to kill her. He is just going to stone the house. You know, you throw the stone there.
$3,000 to stone the house?
Yes, to stone the house and make her feel sorry as revenge for me.
Amelia told us she wanted Sarah scared because she felt that Sarah, throughout their relationship, had disrespected her, did not acknowledge her as a woman with more maternal experience.
Because of the child?
Because of the child. I am not welcome to help. I think she did not like my style. The mother in my culture is revered and respected. I want to be treated with respect. I'm her mother. My marriage, she disrespected me. That is a slap on my face, and it is even more than death to me.
I understand. You were insulted.
Oh my God. Million words more than that. Showing disrespect to a mother is death.
Is it enough, though, to have someone to do it?
Yes, because it killed me.
I think she was trying to portray herself as this poor little old lady who was as much a victim as anything. We weren't buying any of it. I mean, it's pure evil. There's no other way to describe, what happened here.
Then, detectives ask Amelia the question they've been trying to answer since day one.
Is Lorenzo involved?
No,
Does he know to this day what happened?
no. I do not want to tell my son. Because if I tell him, he will have problems. He loves the woman very much.
He's still in love with her?
Yeah.
Does Michael know anything about this?
No. What will I tell him?
Despite Amelia's claim that she had no intention for Sarah to be killed, police proceed with charges against her.
We were able to establish that she hired him and paid him. that gave us more than enough to further solidify the case we had against her already.
The case against Ardale Tickles is strengthened when tests match his DNA to blood evidence found at the crime scene.
Both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Reyes were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and in Amelia's case, she was charged with the crime of solicitation.
When we first heard that it was Amelia, the feeling was, no, this isn't right.
When I found out about her, I'm like, where the heck did Amelia come from?
I was absolutely shocked that the mother-in-law orchestrated the entire thing, and it was a hitman who did it. Was, wow, that was a twist none of us expected. Like, there's no way. It's like out of a movie.
In January of 2000, both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Reyes faced trial for the murder of Sarah Reyes.
There was no trial for Ardale Tickles.
He was going to go to trial, and Ardale Tickles unexpectedly decides to plead guilty. He's completely remorseful. He says, you know, I shouldn't have done it. And then he got life in prison from the judge.
Amelia Reyes enters a plea of not guilty.
She maintained her innocence, that she had just paid this guy $3,000 to go throw stones at the house.
I testified at the trial. I was there to let the jury know who Sarah was. I was afraid they would see this sweet, meek little old lady and not believe that someone like that could be evil and could organize this murder.
Ardale Tickles refuses to testify, but prosecutors present the recording of his police interview describing the plot and the crime, as well as the telephone message that captured Sarah's last moments of life.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening. It was so unspeakably brutal. It was chilling.
After a 7-day trial, Amelia Reyes is found guilty of all charges. She is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I was relieved when the guilty verdict was read, and I am glad that they saw through that demeanor that she put on.
For those closest to Sarah, there will always be a void left behind.
She gave joy, she received joy. I really do miss her. I need to hear her laugh.
We lost a really good person that day. We lost a light.
On September the 22nd, 2003, multimillionaire Robert Durst was on trial in Galveston, Texas for the murder of Morris Black. That trial was the beginning of one of the biggest legal stories in America.
All eyes were on this case.
This was an international story because the defendant owned more than anybody probably owned in all of New York City.
This case was not going to be a whodunit. It was going to be a whydunit.
This is what Mr. Durst did to Morris Black.
How in the hell do we get this jury to look at what happened versus all the he did afterwards that makes him look like a very dangerous, calculated killer?
This was not a case that I was involved in. The lawyers that were involved are all friends of mine. But even as much as I thought I knew, I had no idea what was really going on in Galveston County.
None of it makes sense. Absolutely none of it.
It would be nice to believe that when you have the evidence, when it's credible and compelling, you're going to get the right verdict. But when you have a defendant with unlimited resources and money, unfortunately, that's not the way it always happens. It's important to find out truly what happened behind the scenes in Galveston County, truly what happened with that jury, with that verdict, with those lawyers. That's a story nobody has ever heard before.
They broadcast it as a torso floating in the bay. And the body would have been down in here. And I actually pointed out to the bay and I said, look at those dark spots just under the surface of the water. Out beyond the pier,
because you can see the dark shadows of the bags out there. And then we fished in 3 bags that were floating under the water. That was 2 arms and a leg. And then the missing leg was found farther west of the crime scene, washed up on the beach. There was no head. Kind of seared into your memory, if you will. It's hard to forget.
I finished all the chores for the day. I sit down, turn on the TV to watch Sunday Night Football, and within 2 or 3 seconds, the phone rings. I answer the phone, and dispatch says, "This is Galveston Dispatch. We have a torso floating in the bay." And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you right. What did you say?" I got in the car, and I respond to the scene.
I think one of the things people don't know is sometimes prosecutors are on call, kind of like a doctor's on call. In special crimes at Harris County, we were on call 24 hours a day with a beeper or with the cell phone.
You don't want to make any assumptions at that point. You let the evidence tell you where to go next. We have the torso, 2 legs, 2 arms, and 3 empty bags. I see the trash in the bags. There was a cover for a bow saw. One thing that really stood out that I remember, there was a newspaper flyer that said resident and had an address on Avenue K. The immediate thought was that that address may very well have something to do with this crime.
Using fingerprints, the medical examiner is able to confirm the identity of that headless body as being 71-year-old Morris Black. Why would anybody want Morris Black dead, and why would anybody need to mutilate his body in such a horrible way? While Morris Black's family is notified about his death, the Galveston Police Department arrives at that address on Avenue K.
The trash was out at the curb, and inside the trash can there was a .22 pistol and an empty shell casing. We're very much thinking we had a murder weapon at that point.
The police department also recovered an eyeglass prescription in the trash, and the name of the prescription belonged to Robert Durst. At this time, nobody knew who Robert Durst was.
We also found an eviction notice for Morris Black for apartment number 1. Inside Morris Black's apartment, there was blood in the drain, the sink, the shower, certainly evidence that would indicate that blood was being washed down the drain. And they found evidence of blood in the hallway going from Morris Black's apartment to the apartment across the hall. The landlord told us that Dorothy Siner was the person who rented the apartment across the hall from Morris Black.
Dorothy Siner is not at the apartment, so the police department gets a search warrant for that second apartment, and when they go inside, they find blood spatter on the walls.
There were drop cloths and cuts of linoleum consistent with dismemberment of the body. Morris Black was kind of a loner. He had a good heart, but he could be difficult.
Morris Black would wear like a little knit cap all the time, and he walked around like a sailor man, you know, and he was a merchant marine. The way he lived was off the grid. He kept to himself.
Usually you can get a better feel for your victim, but Morris Black just kind of stayed this shadowy character that not a lot was ever known about.
The autopsy showed that there was an injury to the head while he was alive because there was blood in the lungs. Only way you can get that is flowing blood coming down the esophagus, down into the lungs, and the person is breathing at the time. We know he wasn't shot in the torso, the arms, or the legs. We know there was a gunshot because of the high-velocity spatter. Likely conclusion, Morris Black was shot in the head. So this person who rented the apartment under the name Dorothy Siner was somebody we wanted to talk to. And through the internet, we were able to locate Dorothy Siner and actually called her up and talked to her. She had no connection to Galveston. She had no connection to Morris Black. We asked her about Robert Durst. She went to high school with Robert Durst.
We do not believe in coincidences in the criminal justice system. And the fact that Robert Durst went to high school with Dorothy Siner, I call it circumstantial evidence.
During the investigation, we came across information that Robert Durst may have dressed as a woman from time to time.
Librarians said that they did see Robert Durst and Morris Black together at the library, and that Robert Durst would come in dressed in drag.
And so we figured that Robert Durst is Dorothy Signer. Officers pulled over the vehicle, which was driven by Robert Durst. And inside the car, they found a bow saw and traces of blood in the back portion of the SUV. Officer Cody and I were upstairs of Galveston Police Department where Robert Durst was, and he asked what his bond was. And Cody told him it was $250,000, and then asked him, "Do you have that kind of money?" And his response was, "Not on me." He's booked, and then he made bond, I believe, the next day. At that time, I got a call from a New York Times reporter asking me to look at an old photo and see if it's the same Robert Durst. From there, all hell broke loose.
We find out Robert Durst was actually a real estate heir from New York City. His family owns Times Square. So what in the world is Robert Durst doing dressed as a woman in Galveston, Texas in some crappy apartment?
Galveston is a port city, so we have people from all over the world coming through our ports.
And it seems to be the perfect place to get away, disappear, and hide if you're looking to do that.
One of the reporters told me that he was a suspect in the disappearance of his wife from a long time ago, and that case had never been solved.
He's also a suspect in LA in his best friend Susan Berman's murder only a year earlier. Maybe he was hiding in Galveston because these charges were heating up.
When the time comes for Durst to show up for the initial hearings in the Morris Black case, he is nowhere to be found.
He was on the lam, and turns out he's got resources to be on the lam forever if he wants.
You know, if he's that wealthy, just pay the cash to bond out like that. There's no telling where he is now. You know, he's gone.
Someone killed someone and cut their body up? That seems crazy.
Robert Durst hired the dream team of Texas.
Justice isn't black or white, it's green. And he had the green.
The police department has arrested Robert Durst for the murder of Morris Black. But with seemingly unlimited financial resources, Robert Durst skips town and now he's on the run.
Robert, please come home. The trust has the wherewithal to pay for your legal defense.
45 days goes on. They're searching for Robert Durst. He's finally found 1,500 miles away from Galveston, Texas, in Pennsylvania, where he's arrested. Shoplifting a sandwich.
He rented a car, and he's using Morris Black's ID, and he's using Morris Black's name.
While all this is going on, you also have a prosecutor in Westchester County, New York, looking into a murder allegation against Robert Durst there, and another one in LA County, California, where they're looking at the possibility of Robert Durst also committing a murder there.
Because there was a lot of evidence. The Morris Black case looks open and shut. It doesn't look good for Robert Durst. And then this guy who just got arrested shoplifting a sandwich has hired literally the dream team of Texas. Dick DeGuerin, Mike Ramsey, and Chip Lewis. You don't get better. We all knew at that point it's gonna be a fight.
When Robert Durst hired Dick DeGuerin, everybody knew who he was. He was the biggest guy to hire in Texas. He was the best. And I knew that personally because I tried the Dror Goldberg case against him, and I got to see firsthand, up front and personal, how great he was at his job. I also got to see things that I thought he made mistakes doing, where I felt like maybe I could share those thoughts with Joel and Kurt as they prepared for their trial, and I did that. And I knew Chip better than both of those guys because he's a friend of mine. And Chip worked at the DA's office when I was at the DA's office. He was an up-and-coming star prosecutor who was great in trial, who is very, very charming. He left the office to go out and make his own name in the criminal defense world. So I knew that Joel and Kurt were going to have their work cut out for them.
I had enjoyed a lot of success and created a very favorable reputation. That very fortunate set of circumstances put me in a position to be hired on the Durst case. Here I am, just over 30, going to be trying the most high-profile case in the country, if not the world.
I remember walking over to the main courthouse, and as soon as we turned the corner, there was 50, 100 cameras. It was bizarre.
All eyes were on this case.
This was an international story because the defendant was the son of a billionaire with a B, somebody who owned more than anybody probably owned in all of New York City.
This case was not going to be a whodunit. It was going to be a whydunit, because with the amount of forensics that you have cutting a body up, they're going to be able to tie back something with the DNA to Durst. That's unavoidable.
We filed a pleading with the court that said you do not need to do DNA. There will be no contest as to the identity of the shooter. And Mr. Durst swears to affirm that he killed Morris Black. It was self-defense resulting in an accidental discharge of a gun. It was not a murder.
Everybody was shocked that that was going to be a defense. Well, of course, there was always a question in everyone's mind whether he was insane. You have someone who is trying to hide his identity, dressing as a woman, killed someone and cut their body up? That seems crazy.
How does self-defense end up with body parts in a trash bag thrown in the bay? Doesn't quite make sense.
When you read the legal paragraph of what justifies self-defense, there's a lot of words. And it's hard to make a jury understand all those words and all those little elements and pieces matter before self-defense applies. Before you're allowed to use deadly force self-defense, you have to believe the threat is imminent, like about to happen, and you have to use reasonable force necessary to defend yourself. Self-defense cases are harder to prosecute than you think.
We knew the atrocious, horrific facts and what they were. The question was, how in the hell do we get this jury to look at what happened versus all the he did afterwards that makes him look not only guilty, but like a very dangerous, calculated killer. But we had all the money in the world to do all the work we wanted to do to get there. I think if we can keep this on track, we're going to win this case.
Robert Durst is charged with the murder of his neighbor, Morris Black. As the prosecution prepares to go to trial, they come to court with what you would assume to be a plethora of evidence. And for his part, Robert Durst has hired the best defense lawyers that money can buy.
We had everything at our disposal. We had an unlimited budget. We had the ability to do things that 99% of the time a criminal defense lawyer doesn't have to do. Deep, involved, expensive polling of thousands of people to put together a most compelling motion to change a venue was the first in that step. We could show the folks that met the criteria for jury selection in Galveston County were overwhelmingly predisposed to believe Bob Durst was guilty based on what had been reported to date.
We didn't have that kind of money. We did not have any polls, but we're getting affidavits from citizens, and we're showing that, yes, he could get a fair trial.
Change of venue, if a judge grants that, it's going to cost the county a lot of money because you have to pay to put up not just 12 jurors plus 2 alternates in another county, but all the security, the bailiff, however many deputies need to come to be in charge of the jury and the defendant, the court staff, the judge, the prosecution team, the defense team. The county's got to pay for all that times every single night you're in trial, and they don't come home on the weekends. I think that when you add up all those expenses, you're easily talking about, with a trial that lasted as long as this one did, close to $1 million. So that's a huge bill, and they don't have the money for that.
The judge has a lot of discretion on a change of venue. However, the polling was so thorough, the support for the motion was overwhelming, that a court of appeals, if she denied change of venue, would likely make them try the whole case again. The goal in mind was to posture the case to a point that the state would agree to trade our change of venue motion for individual voir dire.
The defense's position was, if you give us individual jury selection, if you permit us to examine jurors one by one, then we don't have to take the show on the road. Mike Ramsey and Dick DeGuerin could literally drill down on individual juror about whether they could find that someone could kill his neighbor, decapitate him, dismember him, throw him in Galveston Bay, and still walk out of that courtroom.
So in a typical case, they all would have had 30 minutes to pick their entire jury and be done. In this case, they traded it for unlimited voir dire, which means that Chip Lewis, because he was the one that handled voir dire, got up and talked to every individual juror for as long as he wanted to. And then they decided what they wanted to do with each juror. Whole different ballgame. So strategically, what he did playing that card was brilliant. And I've never seen it done before that way, ever.
The defense team definitely took advantage of the individual jury questioning and spent a lot of time with jurors. Chip Lewis, in particular, did a lot of the jury questioning, and he was getting to be friends with those jurors before they ever walked into that jury box. I'm watching jury selection. They bring the panel of 300 jurors in, and he proceeds to, by the next day, have memorized every single one of their names and connected it to their face.
I was very surprised that he had taken the time to memorize everybody's name.
We ask a lot of questions about loved ones, friends, somebody close to you that has dealt with mental issues and struggles. Plant the seed in the jury's mind. They're starting to think already before they're even chosen. There's something about mental issues in this case.
The defense was very focused with the jury questioning. Have you ever been in a situation where something happens, you didn't mean for it to happen, and you kind of lose your mind?
We're looking for jurors who have been inoculated to the fact that you're going to see some awful. What I'm going to ask you to do is compartmentalize that awful. And the way you do that is you follow the universal law. It is the law of nature. Nothing that happens after the fact can change how Morris Black died.
In a moment, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read the court's charge to you, which is the court's instructions on the law and the legal definitions that you need to decide this case.
Jury instruction did not support the defense narrative about they couldn't consider anything after the killing.
We're ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. It took nearly 2 months for both sides to pick this jury. The trial of Robert Durst was then set to begin on September the 22nd, 2003, which was almost 2 years after the murder occurred.
Trial is supposed to start, and all of a sudden, there are these jailhouse tapes.
That's going to make it much more likely that they're going to want to indict me for Cassie.
Taped jail conversations have the potential to completely change the course of a trial.
No, you're going to be all right, I promise.
Okay.
Days before we were to begin the trial, 36 hours worth of recorded phone jail conversations with Robert Durst arrived.
Durst had previously been in custody in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania jail had hours of recordings of Durst speaking to Mrs. Durst.
We learned that Robert Durst married real estate power player Deborah Lee Sheraton in December of 2000. Their marriage began less than 9 months before Durst killed Morris Black.
I'm trying not to plan what kind of look I should have on my face.
I know.
Am I supposed to be smiling, or am I supposed to be grim?
If you're thinking of expression, I would just have like as close to no expression as you
that's what I think.
As you hear Robert Durst talking to his wife, you hear how cunning he is, how smart he is. So you get the real essence and character of the man in these tapes in a way that poor little pitiful frail Robert Durst sitting in the courtroom looks nothing like.
First he was going to say you're incompetent. Then he was going to say you're insane.
There's a conversation between him and his wife where she did not want him to use one of his attorneys because she was afraid that he wanted to use the insanity defense. And what good lawyer wouldn't consider it in this case? The problem was the family trust had a provision that if he was ever found insane or incompetent in a court of law, he would be eliminated from the trust.
That would mean, okay, that your decisions, like giving me a power of attorney, was you were incompetent at the time, so that it's not good. And wait, let me finish, no interrupts. What he doesn't want is me to get any of the trust money later on, so they would take all your money and they would become the guardians of it. It's too risky.
The $750 million that he standed to inherit would not go to him.
These calls were mostly about conversations having to do with the money, so you would think that a lot of that is not even going to be relevant, and that was the ruling that Judge Chris made, that however cold-blooded he seems discussing money has nothing to do with what happened in the murder of Morris Black, so she didn't let hardly any of the jail call information into evidence.
The defendant, Robert Durst, stands charged by indictment with the offense of murder. The defendant has pleaded not guilty.
The Texas trial of the century is ready to begin.
He murdered Morris Black in cold blood and tried to get away with it.
As the prosecutors are presenting their case, it looks pretty bad for Durst. The prosecutors had a mound of evidence that seemed insurmountable.
Motive is not a required element in any murder case. We're all taught that, we all get that, but we also know that if you can't put a motive out there that makes sense to a jury, you're probably not going to win your case.
The prosecution laid out this was a premeditated murder to kill Morris Black, to assume his identity.
The prosecutors laid out evidence that Robert Durst was no dummy. He didn't just panic. He executed Morris Black, and then he proceeded to chop up his body and try to get rid of it.
I mean, people within our office, lawyers on the case, thought there's no way you can win this case.
When the defense got up there, they talked about his life as a young boy and some of the hardships.
He had a tough father, by all accounts.
We establish he witnessed his mother commit suicide when he was 11 years old and was raised essentially by a caretaker.
The defense wanted to portray him as having some mental illness or a little bit of insanity without using it as an actual defense.
We let elements of Asperger's, on the spectrum, all of the quirks that are Bob Durst start early and often. We didn't need the jury to like him. We needed him to understand he's a strange bird.
Because of his Asperger's, because of his upbringing, he was very prone to being bullied.
Robert Durst appeared to me to be very small. He looked like maybe he was about 5'5" to 5'7" at the most. He's a very unintimidating person.
The defense dressed him in overly big clothes to make him look smaller.
DeGuerin raised his chair all the way up to make Dick look that much larger than Bob.
My bailiff would go during the breaks and lower his seat, so the seat went up and down all day.
We were painting a picture of Bob that we wanted the jury to see. We presented a stark contrast between the quirky, eccentric, little, frail Bob Durst and the aggressive, threatening Morris Black.
Morris Black would sometimes get loud, or he could be mean or belligerent.
The defense said they were friends. For whatever reason, their friendship unraveled, and Morris Black targeted Durst and got killed in the process.
Once a jury starts to think, this son of a bitch, I mean, nobody's going to miss him, the world's better off without him, it makes Bob Durst a whole lot more likable.
No one deserves to be murdered, obviously, but there are different degrees of victims, too. Let's keep it real. And it's a lot easier to prosecute a case when your victim is nice and sweet and innocent than when they're not.
We had a body, and we had a lot of other circumstantial evidence. So it's good evidence. But what we didn't have, the smoking gun is not there, so to speak. In this case, it'd be the smoking head. Now, how do you prove it without the head? How do you prove that it was accidental? Intentional? How do you prove it? I don't know.
Periodically, when we were all together, Ramsey would inevitably, with perfect comedic timing, say, "They didn't find a head yet, did they?" It was always out there in orbit. You better hope they don't find the head, because if that bullet holes back here and not right here, we got a problem.
All defendants are innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof rests on the prosecution to prove the case. The state calls one of their main witnesses, their lead detective, Cody Gonzalez, to walk through every piece of evidence that connects to Robert Durst. Once the prosecution finishes with their direct of Cody Gonzalez, the defense begins their cross-examination.
I knew when he was asked, "What can you point to that shows this is not self-defense?" You could hear a pin drop. And he said, "Nothing."
Once the prosecution rests, the defense's first witness was Robert Durst. Putting a defendant on the stand in a murder case when you're as odd as Robert Durst is, that's a pretty risky move.
There was never a doubt that Bob had to testify.
There's no rule that says you have to put the defendant on the stand and it has to come out of his mouth to say, "I acted in self-defense." But a lot of old school defense lawyers do believe that if you're going to walk a defendant and get them found not guilty, if it's self-defense, they have to get up there and claim self-defense.
Durst is answering questions from his defense team about what it was like to be disguised as a woman while he was living in Galveston. And he proceeded to tell these stories about his wig falling off, his wig catching fire one time. It was incredibly bizarre and funny, and jurors were laughing.
If I were the prosecutor and I saw the jury laughing along with my defendant, I would be pretty alarmed because they're liking this guy. I think the only way you can counter that is to just keep hammering home. We're talking about a man who got a bow saw and tried to cut up a human body to conceal the fact that he committed murder. Don't let them take the monster and make you think he's likable. Come on.
The defense did talk about how Robert Durst and Morris Black were friends, and they lived across the hall from each other. One time he'd even given him a key to the apartment. But then Robert Durst and Morris Black had gotten into an argument, and Durst had taken his key back from Morris Black, and he did not want Morris Black to come back into his apartment anymore. Robert Durst testifies at the time of the murders that when he came back into the apartment, Morris Black was there in the apartment. Robert Durst wanted Morris to leave, but Morris Black didn't want to leave and knew where Robert Durst kept the gun. So Morris Black went to go get the gun, and that the gun accidentally went off in this fight over the gun.
The judge did allow Robert Durst to step down off the witness stand and demonstrate with his attorney to the jurors how exactly the struggle happened and how the gun went off.
Their whole presentation was choreographed down to every step.
What you can see happen in a courtroom with your own eyes because it's acted out in front of you is always going to be more impactful than just sitting on a witness stand talking about it. That is his version of events that he has all the right in the world to describe and show the jury. If they chose to believe it, that's up to the jury.
Watching this reenactment, it was plausible to me this could have happened.
They were riveted, standing up, leaning over when Durst did the demonstration, the struggle over the gun. The way the struggle happened, the way he fell, and where Morris Black was shot right above the nose through the eyes could not be contradicted by the head.
The head was never found.
When the prosecution cross-examined the witness, they were looking to tear Robert Durst's testimony apart.
Kurt and I split up the cross-examination, and I focused on the dismemberment. You don't get people up after an accident or self-defense. And if you look at the cuts, this is not something that was done haphazardly or in a crisis. This is something that was done with the skill of a surgeon.
This case is not about what happened to Morris Black's body after he was dead. This case is not about what Bob Durst did after Morris Black died. The sole issue for you ladies and gentlemen to decide is how.
And the crux of this case is whether the state has proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Bob Durst knowingly, intentionally, voluntarily killed Morris Black. There's no motive and nothing to gain.
What makes sense about anything that this man did on September 28th, September 29th, September 30th, and October 1st when he fled? None of it makes sense.
The defendant has demonstrated the willingness to commit horrid, indescribable acts of butchery. That man, Robert Durst, is guilty of murder. Thank you.
I think that if you would have asked anybody in the courthouse, we would have all told you, well, he's going to be found guilty. But my brother at the time was a court reporter in a different courtroom, and he went and watched a lot of the trial, and he told me how it was going pretty much every day. And I had even kind of been warned it wasn't going great for the prosecution.
Your job as a juror is to look and consider all the evidence.
The prosecution's message in their closing arguments were methodical and based on evidence. They weren't as compelling.
The jury must be convinced that Mr. Durst voluntarily and intentionally killed Morris Black. The fact of running away alone cannot supply that evidence.
A huge part of courtroom winning or losing is theater, and it's drama, and it's connecting with a jury. And I think that the defense attorneys just had a better connection.
We went into the jury room for deliberations. A vote was taken, some for guilty, some for not guilty, and some undecided.
A lot of us are thinking this may be a hung jury.
As the jury enters the courtroom, viewers from all over America are tuning in to learn the fate of Robert Durst.
With the jury, find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty.
The courtroom went berserk. Reporters were running out of the courtroom to do live shots. People were crying.
Everybody in the country, especially everybody in law enforcement or a prosecutorial background, thought this was the greatest layup of all time. There's no way he's not going to be convicted. But criminal justice for the Dursts of the world is far different than the average citizen. Justice isn't black or white, it's green. And he had the green.
I don't want to believe that just because a defendant has a lot of money, he can subvert the system and walk away with a not guilty verdict and not get justice. A disaster happened, and it makes me sick. I mean, Joel and Kurt took their loss quietly, a lot better than I would have.
When we heard the verdict, you need to respect the jury and not react when you hear the verdict. It's a tough job. We presented the case to the best of our ability.
It was a pretty awful moment because I have to act like I don't have an opinion about it. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's really dangerous. And he's about to be loosened on the public.
I don't think the jurors had any idea the lens they were going to be under the second they said not guilty.
I did not want to convict this man on what I thought. I wanted to make a decision on what I knew, on the evidence that was presented to me.
Based on the evidence that was presented to us, there was reasonable doubt. I feel that the prosecution did not prove how Morris Black died, we all as jurors agreed that the not guilty is saying not proven.
After Robert Durst was found not guilty, the other charges were kind of just left over. Nobody had the zeal to worry about those, and they all pretty quickly just came to an agreement that he would serve a little bit of time and plead to those cases, and it would all be over with in Texas.
After the jury verdict, there were accusations of, were any of the jurors paid off? Did Durst get to them?
I believe in this case, justice was bought. I believe in this case, with Durst's money, justice was bought.
Not guilty.
What was real surprising to me was soon after the case was over, the head juror on the trial started visiting Robert Durst in jail with his family, becoming friends with him after trial. What can I tell you?
One of the jurors subsequent to that case worked for Bob Durst himself. And then Bob donated $1 million to Galveston County to build a law library.
I think that the jurors in this case, if you ask them today, would change their verdict.
I'm getting kind of emotional here because, I mean, now you find out all this stuff afterwards, and I just felt like we were all played.
Robert Durst was found not guilty for what happened with Morris Black, but his real day of reckoning came in a courtroom in LA County for the Susan Berman case with a prosecutor named John Lewin. John Lewin was able to build a strong circumstantial evidence case because he took the incriminating evidence from Robert Durst's friends and connected that to the incriminating evidence from Robert Durst himself to link Robert Durst to the murder of Susan Berman. John Lewin was granted access to all of Kurt and Joel's files and spent a whole lot of time talking to them, as well as the people involved with the Kathy Durst case. John Lewin was able to take a bird's eye view of what was going on all across the country, from New York to Texas to LA, and make it all understandable and put it all together and make it all admissible in that one trial in LA County. And nobody else ever did that.
I got the first call when Bob Durst was arrested in New Orleans on the California warrant. He said, "I need you to get here. They've arrested me for murder."
Based on Robert Durst's history, there was no telling what would happen with the Susan Berman trial in LA. I mean, lightning struck once. Maybe it would strike again.
Dick DeGuerin was Durst's defense lawyer. Chip Lewis was his defense lawyer. John Lewin gave his opening statement, and then they shut down the courtroom for COVID. And it was over a year later that they continued the trial. The beautiful thing that happened, John Lewin figured out a way to make the motive of why he killed Susan Berman have to necessarily include what happened in Galveston and what happened in Westchester County.
All three of these cases, ladies and gentlemen, are interrelated. Everything starts with Kathy Durst's disappearance and death at the hands of Mr. Durst. And he had to kill Susan Berman because he feared that she was going to talk. And then he had to kill Morris Black because Morris Black knew who he was and was putting pressure on him.
Judge Wyndham is a fine, fine man. I like him a lot. We're friends. But when he overruled my motion to keep out Morris Black, I told him on the bench, we don't need to have the trials. It's over. There was no ability to make Robert Durst a sympathetic figure. A jury to hear that in the face of everything else, they were never going to acquit him.
When they put Robert Durst on the stand, he was sickly, he was older, the pizzazz had gone away, and John Lewin was super prepared and went at him.
It's ridiculous. It's patently absurd. It's a fiction.
Robert Durst is found guilty of the first-degree murder of Susan Berman. More than 20 years after her death, he is sentenced to life without parole.
There was a lot of satisfaction in watching the outcome of the Los Angeles trial, because it did feel like he was being accountable not just for Susan Berman's murder, but for Morris Black and for Kathy Durst's murder.
Because of what happened in Galveston County, John Lewin was able to use all that to help put his case together. So at the end of the day, there was a point to all of it. It didn't happen as soon or as nicely or as easily as maybe we would have wanted, but in the end, they got justice.
A generous soul.
She was a very giving person and a very sharing person.
Who helped neighbors in need.
When they needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there.
Is found brutally murdered.
This homicide was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked.
There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
It was something that shocked the community.
Police uncover a sinister trail of deception and hate.
He had some strange tendencies. He seemed to be stalking her.
The polygraph came back with some clear signs that he was being deceptive.
To unveil a killer no one expected.
He made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor, so she never saw it coming.
He had two completely different faces on him. He was just the devil incarnate.
One hot summer morning in the sleepy rural town of Clinton, Louisiana, the sheriff's office gets a call that sends them to a farmhouse just outside of town. It belongs to a woman named Janora Guillory.
When Janora didn't show up for work on Monday morning, her coworkers started to get nervous. They called her cell phone, she didn't answer. They called her landline, and it was busy, stayed busy. At that point, a friend at work called the sheriff's office in East Feliciana and said, "Would you please go check on our coworker, Janora Guillory?"
The deputy that worked for the East Feliciana Sheriff's Office, and he went to the residence to look for her. The door was unlocked, and he discovered the body.
He backed out of the house, and he said he threw up outside. He could barely even speak to the dispatcher. He was so upset by what he found.
Detectives are called to the scene.
You could tell something had happened at the very entrance of the door. There was blood right there on the door handle.
The blood on the floor leads detectives inside the house.
There, you could follow the blood trail, and it went into the kitchen. There were several knives that had blood on them inside of the drawer. There was also evidence like someone tried to use the phone, and there was blood on the side of the phone.
The blood leads to the bedroom, where detectives are met with a gruesome sight. In the middle of the floor lies the lifeless body of 42-year-old Janora Guillory.
You could see evident tears in her skin, which, I mean, we knew at the time were deep stab wounds. She was beaten severely. There was blood from basically the floor to the ceiling.
The lamp was broken and stuff knocked over in the bedroom.
I've seen other homicides that I've worked that this one was more brutal.
The body was also half closed, legs opened, and she was pinned against the wall. There was a possibility that she had been raped.
Detectives in this small parish don't investigate many homicides, let alone one this brutal. They call in the Louisiana State Police to help process the scene.
They took some DNA samples of the material that was found under her fingernails.
The samples are sent to the lab to see if there are any traces of the killer's DNA.
We didn't find any type of murder weapons. We found that it was actually no forced entry. We pretty well figured that it was somebody that she knew and had a little bit of trust in to open the door.
As police collect evidence, Janora's neighbors, Philip and Amy Skipper, arrive on the scene.
They was, of course, shocked. Philip's wife, Amy, she was really destroyed, and she was the friend of Miss Guillory's.
Police inform Janora's family. Her brother-in-law, Albert, is the first to get the terrible news.
I received a call from the sheriff's office indicating that Janora was dead, had been murdered, and obviously it was just an unbelievably bad moment. To Janora's sister, my spouse at that time, Yvonne, that was probably the single most devastating moment in her life.
The family rushes to the scene. When they arrive, detectives ask them for any details they can provide about Janora.
Janora grew up in Eunice, Louisiana, a small town in St. Landry Parish. From the time that Janora was a young girl in school, she was a very giving person. She was a very intelligent woman, filled with love for life, filled with love for animals.
Janora worked at an insurance company in Baton Rouge, but chose to live in rural Clinton, where she could indulge in her passion for animals.
She had 30 dogs, she had 3 or 4 horses. She had rescue animals. She took care of friends' animals if they couldn't. Animals were a big part of her life.
Friends were a big part of Janora's life too. She was thrilled when a sweet couple moved in across the street, and they immediately hit it off.
Philip and Amy Skipper moved into her neighborhood, and I felt very comfortable that she had developed this warm relationship with the Skippers.
Over the years, Janora and her neighbors became close friends.
Janora told me how reliable they were and how hardworking they were.
Janora really liked her neighbors, and she thought of the Skippers almost like family.
Now her friends are heartbroken over Janora's violent death, and police are faced with the puzzle of finding her killer.
It made no sense. Janora had no enemies, and she wasn't involved in anything shady or suspicious.
When the autopsy report comes back the next day, it concludes that the murder took place between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. It also reveals just how brutal Janora's final moments were. She was shot 5 times with a .22 caliber gun and stabbed 5 times. But neither of these attacks caused her death.
A severe blow to the back of the head severed her brainstem from her body. She was actually alive, and she was fighting back and was stabbed and shot.
This was one of the most violent homicides that I've worked. It was a very much overkill, which usually means it is a crime of passion.
This was a particularly brutal, dastardly deed. We all stood outside Janora's house that morning and talked about who could possibly have done this.
Despite the concern of Janora's family and friends, detectives can't rule out anyone as a suspect.
We began talking to the neighbors and co-workers, the ones that showed up, and just started trying to get information.
One person in particular draws investigators' attention: Janora's neighbor, Philip Skipper.
Philip was real calm. What really got me was his over wanting to help too much, you know. We just had a feeling Philip knew something.
Coming up, investigators uncover a dark obsession.
He was infatuated with her and couldn't take no for an answer.
And menacing secrets.
They called her names behind her back all the time, but never to her face.
There was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
That leads them to a suspect they never expected.
They went on a tour of the murder scene, and he described the whole thing.
He just blurted out, "Do you have a woman named Mrs. G that was murdered over there?"
After 42-year-old Janora Guillory is found savagely killed in her home, detectives in Clinton, Louisiana suspect that her neighbor, Philip Skipper, might know something about the murder.
Philip was over helpful at the crime scene, and it is something that we wanted to check out more.
Police decide to bring in Philip Skipper and his wife, Amy, for an interview.
Janora really liked her neighbors, and the Skippers had a young child, and their stepson, who was 15 years old at the time.
Philip Skipper tells investigators that when his young family first moved to Clinton, they were down on their luck, but their neighbor Janora kindly helped out.
She started to take them under her umbrella and make sure that they had food and made sure that they had electricity.
When the Skippers needed extra money for baby food or diapers, Janora was always there. The trailer they were living in, for example, was really dilapidated, so Janora helped them buy a new trailer. She helped them improve their lives as much as she could.
Janora's kindness didn't stop there.
She started to employ Philip to do all of the work in her yard and around the house, and employed Amy Skipper to do the work inside her house.
Janora treated the Skippers like family and trusted them with keys to her property.
She was just a very, very generous neighbor.
Detectives want to know if the Skippers ever argued with Janora. Amy Skipper said their relationship had recently been strained by an unfortunate incident.
Philip Skipper was raising pit bulls, and there was one dog that was not a pit that didn't get along with his other pit bulls, and Janora agreed to keep that in her kennel with her dogs. Well, that dog somehow got loose during the day while Janora was at work. The dog ran back to the Skipper's trailer and killed a goat. They kept as a pet. Amy Skipper ran over to Janora's house, got on the phone, called Janora at work, and was upset with Janora. Now that's witnessed by a couple of Janora's co-workers who heard Janora's end of the conversation. She was crying by the end of this phone call. That's how upset Janora was. And Janora told Amy Skipper on the phone, "Leave the key at my house, get out of my house, and never come back."
When police question Philip about the conflict, he tells them that he and Amy had since patched things up with Janora, and they were back on friendly terms.
Philip Skipper was dismissive about the falling out. He said it was just a dispute among neighbors, and they worked it out, and there was no lingering after effects.
Police are skeptical about Philip's version of events, and when they notice scratches on his arms, they wonder if they were made by Janora while trying to fight for her life.
Questioned him about that. He said it was from him and his stepson wrestling in the yard.
Not convinced by his story, investigators ask Philip where he was on the night of the murder.
And he said he was asleep at the time that the murder happened.
To confirm Philip's story, police asked to interview his 15-year-old stepson, John Ballio.
When you interview at the juveniles in Louisiana, you have to have permission of the guardian or the parent, which we had. I mean, they did cooperate there and let us talk to them.
When detectives questioned John, they noticed scratches on his arms too. Is it possible Genora fought back against two attackers?
John Ballio had marks on him. He gave us the same story.
John corroborates his stepdad's story. But police are still suspicious.
The marks on their arms was really something that we wanted to check out more if they was being truthful. So after that interview, we did decide to have a polygraph set up.
Philip and John agree to take the test, but before it can be scheduled, investigators uncover a critical detail.
During the course of the investigation, we did learn about an insurance policy Miss Guillory had taken out on herself, and the money would go to the skippers.
Was an insurance payout reason enough for the skippers to kill their friend and neighbor?
With a lack of motive, it's really hard to find the killer.
The insurance policy was an incentive for them to actually murder her.
Police have just discovered that murder victim Genora Guillory's neighbors, the Skipper family, are the beneficiaries of Genora's $25,000 life insurance policy.
And it's just kind of unusual that the neighbor would have an insurance policy and list the other neighbor as a beneficiary. They're not related.
The insurance policy raises eyebrows for investigators, but Genora's family is well aware of the policy and does not suspect foul play.
Genora wanted to make sure that the skippers had the food that they needed, had the clothing that they needed for at least a period of time should she meet an untimely departure. The skippers, after Genora's death, did not know how to collect. They contacted me and asked me to assist them, and I did.
Still, police believe the insurance money is a possible motive. That, coupled with the scratches on Philip and John's arms, convinces detectives to take the next step.
Philip Skipper and John Ballio showed up at the Baton Rouge Police Department, which has a polygraphy unit, and they both took separate polygraph tests.
The polygraph interrogator asked 15-year-old John Ballio for an alibi.
John Ballio said he was at home asleep when the murders occurred.
Both John and Philip are asked about their knowledge of the murder by the examiner. And when their responses are analyzed, detectives are surprised by the results.
Both of their tests came back with no real signs of deception.
The results on the polygraphs, they was inconclusive, and the officer that was doing the polygraph didn't think that they had done the murder.
The results are a blow to the investigation, and lead detectives drop the skippers as suspects.
We still didn't have no physical evidence, and the polygraph made us think, well, we need to start looking elsewhere.
Detectives interview Genora's friends and coworkers about anyone she may have dated recently.
A friend of Miss Guillory's did give us the name of Tommy Alexandra.
Police track down Tommy at his home in a nearby town. He agrees to talk to police. Tommy tells investigators that he met Genora months prior at a feed store where she was stocking up on food for her animals. Genora agreed to meet Tommy for a drink, their first of several dates.
Tommy and Janora had dated on and off for some time.
But it soon became apparent to Janora that Tommy had other love interests.
It turned out Tommy Alexander was not just dating Janora at the time. He was dating a couple of different women.
Janora really liked him, but Tommy didn't want to settle down. He wasn't going to commit to one woman.
Is it possible that an argument between Janora and Tommy could have turned deadly?
We interviewed Tommy about the homicide.
On the night Janora was murdered, Tommy says that he was at home. Police talk to his girlfriend, who confirms his alibi.
They were able to eventually eliminate him as a suspect. As far as physical evidence to tie a specific suspect to the scene, there really wasn't anything. They kept trying to dig for facts, but they were hampered by the fact that, once again, they couldn't figure out why anyone wanted to kill her.
Determined to get justice for Janora, investigators interview her coworkers and discover that she had an ongoing conflict with a man in her life.
We learned about another friend, Steve Williams, from co-workers, and basically what we learned is that he wanted to date Miss Guillory.
But the feeling is not mutual.
Steve Williams managed to persuade Janora to go out one time, and that was enough for her. She didn't want to go out with him again, and she let him know. But he didn't take that no very well.
Miss Guillory had really got concerned about him, according to her friends. He would sit out in the parking lot and wait for her to get off from work, would show up unannounced.
Steve Williams showed up out of the blue while she was working her horses.
He pursued her a little more aggressively than was comfortable for the family.
From co-workers' explanations over there, he seemed to be stalking Janora.
Janora said, "He's bothering me and he needs to stop."
When detectives look into Steve Williams, they're shocked to learn that their potential suspect is one of their own.
Steve Williams was a Baton Rouge police officer.
Detectives have learned that Steve Williams, who had been repeatedly contacting Janora Guillory in the months before her murder, is a fellow police officer.
Steve Williams had recently gotten a job with the Baton Rouge Police Department, and he was a probationary police officer in the next jurisdiction over.
He was infatuated with her, and he was just a guy who couldn't take no for an answer.
Janora's friends knew that she was not interested, and of course after the murder, when the police are asking, well, who may have been upset with Janora, he became a focus of investigation.
When you investigate a law enforcement officer, it's harder than most because they know the law as good as you do. But we did have good cooperation through Baton Rouge City Police Department. Whatever we needed, they was willing to provide.
As investigators gather more information about Steve, they uncover an intriguing tip from one of his colleagues, 29-year-old officer Tabitha McCants.
Tabitha came forward during the investigation, and she had worked with Steve Williams at Baton Rouge Police Office.
It turns out she got kind of a bad vibe from him.
Tabitha tells investigators that she overheard Steve having heated phone conversations with a woman on several occasions while at the police shooting range.
She said they'd make multiple phone calls.
Police need to check Janora's phone records to find out if Janora was the person Steve had been calling. Tabitha also tells investigators that Steve mentioned shooting targets at his mother's home. And when they ask Tabitha if Steve mentioned the type of gun he used, her answer sets off alarm bells.
She says he used a .22, which by this time we found out that .22 was used in the shooting of Miss Guillory.
As a police officer, of course, Steve Williams had firearms. The .22 caliber pistol, which is certainly not a police gun, but he did have a .22 and he shot it at his mother's house.
Based on the history of him stalking Miss Guillory and the access to a .22, that's when we decided that we would check Steve Williams out a little bit more.
When detectives check Janora's phone records, they quickly discover an alarming pattern.
Looking at the phone records, Steve Williams, in my opinion, was stalking Miss Guillory.
The phone records showed 35 calls to Janora's home from the shooting range in 4 months, and an escalating pattern of calls and messages.
Steve Williams had left several messages for Janora the weekend that she was killed. In fact, he told her in a message that he was stopped by her house on the day she was killed.
Investigators don't waste a second bringing Steve in for questioning, and when they do, his demeanor has them instantly suspicious.
Steve was real nervous. It was just something about him, like he was hiding something from us.
Steve insists he had nothing to do with Janora's murder and claims he stayed at his mother's house the night Janora was killed.
Steve's mama's residence, about 40 minutes away from where the homicide was.
Police believe Janora was murdered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Could Steve have slipped out undetected while his mother was sleeping?
Janora was shot with a .22 caliber pistol, and the fact that he had a .22, was nearby on the day she was killed, it really put him very high up on the suspect list.
That's when we had him take a polygraph.
Steve's answers are analyzed and the results sent to detectives.
Steve Williams' polygraph examination came back with some clear signs that he was possibly being deceptive.
His polygraph basically told us that he may have known something about the murder. Made me really think that he had something to do with this. That's when Steve advised he wasn't going to talk to us no more. He wanted a lawyer.
Despite Steve's refusal to cooperate, detectives continued to investigate him.
He looked like a good suspect. Now the question would be, can they find the evidence to prove it? They got a warrant for his house, they got warrants for his personal cars, and they got a warrant for his police car. Now, to do that, they had to work with the Baton Rouge Police Department. And the detectives were hoping to recover a .22, knife, anything with blood stains, anything to link him to the crime scene. They didn't find anything.
It's a major setback. But detectives still have one last piece of forensic evidence that they believe could connect Steve Williams to the murder. They get a search warrant for a DNA sample from Steve to see if it's a match for genetic material found on Janora's body.
We had those fingernail scrapings that were taken off her from the State Police Crime Lab.
It was determined, yes, there was some male DNA under her fingernails.
Coming up, investigators zero in on a vicious killer.
I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, did she deserve it?
Police hope to use DNA evidence to link Baton Rouge police officer Steve Williams to Janora Guillory's murder. Steve's DNA is compared to material found under Janora's fingernails.
His DNA was not actually determined to be under her fingernails.
The DNA also doesn't match any known criminals in the FBI database.
The fingernail scrapings came back to unknown male genetic profile.
With no physical evidence linking Steve Williams to the crime, he's ruled out as a suspect, leaving investigators at a standstill.
The case had gone cold, and they had no other leads to check into.
The case stays cold for an entire year.
There was great disappointment and great frustration on the part of the family when the case went cold.
The shock of Janora's murder may have faded, but the community lives in fear of a killer who's still at large.
When a murder occurs, it's very alarming. Everybody's on edge, especially after the case was at a standstill.
Then, on July 27, 2001, a tip comes in that changes everything.
And I got a call on the telephone straight to the office. It was Detective Mark Apperson from Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office. And he just blurted out, he's like, "You have a woman named Mrs. G that was murdered over there?" And I just kind of looked over at Don and I said, "Yeah, we do have a woman named Miss G that was killed."
The detective there was working a domestic violence battery, and the victim had came in and told him that her boyfriend knew something about a murder in Clinton.
The woman tells detectives her boyfriend's name is Donnie Fisher.
We rode over there and found Donnie Fisher. We brought him over there to the Tangipahoa Sheriff's Office.
But Donnie Fisher is not in the mood to talk.
You could tell he knew something. That's when I picked out the worst photo that I could find of the crime scene, and I threw it in front of his face and made him look at it and said, "Did she deserve it?"
Reluctantly, Donnie looks down at the gruesome photos, and moments later, his whole demeanor changes.
He started to break down and cry. And he looked at it and then he told us basically his confession.
Donnie says he heard a detailed account of the murder from one of Janora's neighbors.
The neighbor took Donnie Fisher on a tour of the murder scene.
He said once they got there, he took them and said, "This is how it happened."
Investigators are stunned. They question all of Janora's neighbors at the outset of the investigation, but it didn't uncover any useful information or lead to an arrest. Detectives demand that Donnie reveal the neighbor's name.
He said it was John Ballio, Philip Skipper's stepson.
Detectives are shocked. They press Donnie for details, and he claims that John told him about the murder while cleaning up Janora Guillory's house.
Janora Guillory's family had hired John Ballio to go clean up the crime scene. Donnie Fisher, he was out there helping, so as they're cleaning up the house, John Ballio was bragging to Donnie Fisher about how he killed Janora Guillory. John Ballio took Donnie and said, "Here's what we did here, here's what we did here," and he described the whole thing.
Investigators don't know whether to believe Donnie's story, especially since John Ballio's polygraph was considered truthful. Yet every word of it lines up with the evidence.
John actually showed Donnie how Miss G ran through the house, and talking to Donnie, he described everything that we'd put together from what we seen at the crime scene.
Detectives want to know, why would Ballio want Janora dead after all she had done for his family?
Miss Guillory would rather help somebody than hurt somebody. She would do anything she could to help the Skippers.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
Police now believe that Donnie is telling the truth, so they quickly file an arrest warrant.
We picked up John Ballio late on a Friday evening, and we brought him back to East Feliciana Sheriff's Office for charges of first-degree murder.
Investigators now believe the key to cracking this case is a confession from the alleged killer. Luckily, a recent change in Louisiana state law allows them to question a minor accused of murder without a lawyer or guardian present.
The police had to get John Ballio to come clean and tell the truth.
We brought him to my office and advised him of his rights.
He bounced from here to there during his statements at first when we initially questioned him. And then we started talking about the brutality of this homicide.
After probably an hour and a half interviewing, he finally came and told the story about how he killed Miss G.
But first, Ballio needs to get something off his chest.
He didn't do it by himself.
Pointing the finger right back at Philip Skipper.
Detectives are speechless. John Ballio just implicated his stepdad, Philip, in the murder of Janora Guillory. And that's not all.
He pointed to several other people, too.
Detectives in Clinton, Louisiana have just arrested Philip Skipper's stepson, John Ballio, for the murder of 42-year-old Janora Guillory.
John started basically telling us how this went down.
And John claims he didn't act alone. He points the finger at his stepdad, Philip Skipper, and 2 other people.
Johnny Hoyt was a brother-in-law to Philip Skipper, and Lisa Skipper Hoyt was a sister to Philip Skipper. He said they killed this woman together.
Lisa and Johnny, that's the first time their name had ever came up. And we were, of course, shocked.
John Ballio gave a detailed confession on videotape to exactly what happened.
John claims that Philip, Johnny, and Lisa had formed a white supremacist gang called the Brotherhood, and that killing Janora was meant to be John's initiation into the group.
It would be my true test of Brotherhood.
It was a skinhead gang. Actually, they were very anti-black and neo-Nazi.
Philip Skipper, he had 2 completely different faces on him. I mean, he had the one he presented to Janora Guillory, which was, the nice neighbor. And then behind her back, he called her all kind of names. He hated black people.
He basically made her believe that he was her knight in shining armor. She never saw it coming.
Killing Janora would not only initiate Ballio into their gang, but also bring a financial windfall.
Philip Skipper was smart enough to figure out that, hey, if she doesn't like us anymore, it's not going to be very long before she changes that insurance policy and names someone else as beneficiary.
Ballio tells detectives that on the night of the murder, the group had been drinking heavily. They arrived at Janora's door at 2 a.m.
When we got there, Lisa walked up to the door and knocked on it and told Miss G that she needed some money to get the baby some diapers.
And Miss G cracked the door open. That's when Johnny hit her and forced his way in there.
They just jumped on her like a pack of hyenas.
She ran through the house, down the hall, screaming for him to leave her alone. Then she ran into the kitchen and got to the knife drawer trying to get her knife so she could cut him to make him leave her alone.
Eventually, she ran to her bedroom.
John told us that they took turns stabbing her, and they took turns beating her, and they took turns shooting her.
And then somebody threw the final blow that, according to the medical examiner, killed her instantly. It was a blow with a bat to the head.
Philip started hitting her with the bat. And after Miss G stopped breathing, they started raping her.
John Ballio said that they used condoms. There was not an indication of any seminal fluid or any semen at the scene that night.
With no evidence to back up John Ballio's claim of sexual assault, the rape charges are dropped. But detectives are still determined to bring Janora's killers to justice.
John Balio's confession gave us enough probable cause to make sure this case got prosecuted.
For cooperating with police, John is given a deal. He pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a juvenile life sentence to expire when he turns 21. Lisa Hoyt also takes a plea agreement and is sentenced to 25 years. That leaves Johnny Hoyt and Philip Skipper to face justice in separate trials. When news of the arrests gets out, Janora's family is devastated.
When the family found that Philip and John were involved, they were really, really upset and angry that the people that Janora had taken care of so diligently were the ones involved in her murder.
The prosecutors are determined to bring Janora's killers to justice, but they have a problem. There's no concrete evidence linking either Philip or Johnny to the crime scene.
There was some male DNA under her fingernails, but it did not match the samples that we had from the 3 males in this case.
Both cases rest entirely on the testimony of John Balio.
John Balio walked us through what happened that night, and that was crucial for our case. He actually brought everything together and made the whole situation make sense to a jury. With Philip Skipper's trial, the jury came back with a unanimous verdict. He was guilty of second-degree murder.
Philip Skipper is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Philip's wife, Amy, is not charged with any crime.
A lot of times people ask, what about Amy? What about Amy? Amy Skipper had no idea what her husband was doing.
I genuinely believe that Amy Skipper did not have any knowledge of what was going to take place. I believe that she had nothing to do with this.
Johnny Hoyt was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. But for the family of Janora Guillory, no punishment could possibly make up for the pain they suffered in the wake of her murder.
Janora's father died of a broken heart. It was just a very, very difficult time for everyone in that family. I'd like for people to remember Janora as we knew her, warm and happy, and someone who would give the shirt off her back to anyone who needed it. We are all happy to have had our lives enriched by her passage through this life.